Hey TV fans, Bored now, back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 3. The episode is called Shuttle to Kafori. Full spoilers from the start of this review as always. If you enjoyed this video and want more from the channel, then you can help out by giving the video a thumbs up. You can also comment on the video, the review, the episode, whatever you want to do, and share me out on social media as well. There's a lot to talk about in this episode. It packs a lot in. The basic plot and setup is then Pike finds Marie passed out, and later on he learns through M'Benga and Chapel then she has been reinfected by the Gorm virus. Chapel and M'Benga tell Pike about this flower which is on a planet which would potentially be able to cure Marie. And they know this because they know it as something which they came across during their time at war. But the only catch is it's on a Klingon-occupied planet, or it's on a planet which is over Klingon airspace. So there's a treaty which the Federation aren't supposed to break. So it would technically be illegal them going down there. But Pike is determined to save Marie's life no matter what. And they agree to go on this mission. Now it ends up being Pike and M'Benga. But originally Spock puts himself forward saying, I would like to go. And there's a reveal later on why Spock wanted to go with M'Benga. And that's something which is a nice little reveal. But no, it makes sense that Pike is determined that he should go with M'Benga. Stuff on the bridge with Una and with Ortega's when they learn that Klingons are invading the planet. Overall, it's a strong episode. There's a lot of good ideas. There's some good character stuff in the episode. I do like some of the places it goes to, especially with the science of it. It's very original series in many ways in some of the early Trek because of the gimmick of the flower on this planet, and it has like special powers. But again, I think that goes back to this show having a certain nostalgia for original Trek and still having elements of original Trek while doing its own thing. I think in the end it makes it a more compelling episode where things go when it comes to the M'Benga stuff and other things happening, because it did seem at first that it was not a strong enough thing to hang your hat on. Then it was just, okay, Marie being in danger again, her life is at stake again, the virus is back. It felt like, are we spinning this out a bit, and is this really enough of a reason to have M'Benga and Pike go on this expedition, and such a lot of the episode being taken up with it. But because of the twists later on and some of the stuff that's actually going on, I think it makes the episode work. My complaint is then they do pack too much into the episode, considering it's like 53 minutes, whatever it is. There's too much going on at times. When we start getting the zombie stuff, there's a lot going on with that. So you have zombies and Klingons in the same episode, which is pretty wild. I don't even mind zombies. I mean, some would say it goes against what Trek is and that. But this show has always leaned into like the monster movie stuff quite a bit. I think it's just they try a little too much in this episode, and also a couple of bits of the payoff aren't quite there. For example, I think the stuff with M'Benga is a little bit rushed by the end, like the payoff to that stuff. I would still say it's a good episode, but there's definitely things about it which, if you just had a little bit of a rewrite, I think could have been a bit more satisfying. We learn more about M'Benga in this episode too, which I quite like. I quite like than when Pike and him are down on the planet. Pike is sort of gossiping about, well, what do you think about Roger and Chapel? And M'Benga's like, Chris, come on, I've been married 3 times. And there's a crack about how it's maybe 4, depending on how you class a certain thing with a certain woman on a certain planet. But that's something I didn't know about Mbenga, that he'd been married at least 3 times, 3 ex-wives. So that's something where it's like, oh, okay, this guy has a bit more history than we realise when it comes to relationships. And once again, you don't get that much of Mbenga and Pike together, and it makes sense that they're the pairing when you get one of the big reveals later on in the episode. But things start to happen because they discover these bodies on the planet, and it turns out that they've been mixed between like zombies and Klingons. So you're already getting some weird science shenanigans in the episode. They have to hide out when the Klingons come down and start invading the planet. And at first I thought the Klingons were going to be a bit cartoony and over the top, and maybe the stereotypical Klingons that probably a modern Trek show could do without, because the leader of them comes across like that. But at the same time, when things are revealed a bit later on, suddenly it adds a lot more depth to her, and I was a lot more into the story than the Klingon leader, daughter of the Klingon who Mbenga killed in season 2, that like the disgraced war criminal who, when things came to her head, and it's revealed this is her, so she's here on a personal mission. This confrontation where it says she is here to restore her honor, and the way to restore her honor is to kill the man who killed her father, but not because she was in favor of her father, because she too was ashamed of him. She actually wanted to be the one to kill her father. And because Mbenga got there first, she now feels she has to kill him. And it's a credit to the episode, and it sells you on this idea that maybe this could be Mbenga's last episode, for a couple of reasons. One is because of what he reveals to Pike later on, and the other reason is because he could be killed, and it seems at one point like he's going to sacrifice himself. Now, this is all happening to the backdrop of the zombies trying to get at them, and there's this cool little force field around them which is holding the zombies out, but the field is fading all the time and the zombies just keep coming. So that's as I said, there's a lot of moving parts, but that's another tension to the scene as all this is unfolding, because the Klingon has a knife to Pike's throat. At one point Pike says, just tell her it was an accident, it happened in the fight. And Mbenga reveals to her, no, it wasn't an accident, I killed him. It flared up, it was a natural fight, but there was a point where Mbenga was in control and could have chose not to kill him, and because of the history, he was in the moment, he was happy to kill him. And I do like this because this is Pike finding this out for the first time, because it was always played in the episode, and Chapel backed this up. Then it just happened in the fight. It was an accident. So this isn't sort of new information for Pike. But at the same time, there's a layer to it where Mbenga is also saying it to save Pike's life. At one point, it looks like Mbenga's going to sacrifice himself. And like they're just going to have this fight, and he's telling Chris to get out of there, take the flower to Marie. Overpowers the Klingon, but it's probably a bit predictable. He's going to make the choice not to kill her. He does like the honourable thing. He says, there's a monster inside me, but he's not coming out today. That's a good line. And in the end, the Klingon sacrifices herself so that they can escape the planet. And that's her way of reclaiming honour, because she's doing the honourable thing in that sense. So a lot of that stuff I do like. I like that there's a payoff there when it comes to the Mbenga stuff, and there's an actual twist to the Klingons and their involvement in the storyline. And I think that was a good thing to bring up, because that was a very powerful plot in season 2. So it definitely makes sense that there's some consequences and there's like a return to it. It's revealed to Pike at one point then the idea of the flower is that it would save Marie, but it would only save her in the form of like this hybrid, like this sort of hybrid of like the Gorn and like a human. And Pike is obviously taken aback by this. He doesn't want this. He wants the full human Marie, or I guess none at all. And this is why this is why Spock wanted to I love how I did a combination of like Spock and Pike with that. But Spock, this is why he wanted to go along, because of what they were planning, and they didn't really want the captain involved. They wanted to keep him in the dark to protect him. I like that because it's another good character thing for Spock, that he wants to protect someone he's gotten quite close to at this point. It also speaks a bit to Marie, because she knows what's going on and this was actually her plan. That's what they're now going to try and do, it looks like. They're going to infuse Marie with the flower, and in some ways her life will be saved, but not in the way you would necessarily want. A bit of an unsatisfying side to the payoff with M'Benga, because Pike now has this new knowledge, and M'Benga talks to him about Leia, about, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to put in your report? And Pike is very diplomatic in getting around that, because he says, officially we weren't on that planet, so there will be no report. And M'Benga pushes him and says, well, what would you say if there was a report? And again, he's very good at the diplomacy, Pike, but he said, you were doing it to save my life, so that's why I would put in the report. And that is true. That's a very clever way to pull it from Pike. Essentially what it amounts to is that he's standing by his doctor. He's standing by M'Benga. He has this line about, you're not a monster, you're just a man, which comes back to that idea of we all have things like that inside us. We're all flawed. Which is true. I just think it's a little bit of a neat way to tie things up, and considering I do like pretty much all the other stuff with M'Benga in the episode, it does feel like they've swept that up a little too neat and tidy, but it's at least in character with Pike. One of the weaker scenes in the episode, I think, is a scene with Chapel, Marie and Spock, because Spock has this idea to do a mind meld to try and ease Marie's pain. The idea of the scene is okay. I think it's just it gets a bit melodramatic with Spock like screaming, and again it feels a bit like it's an excuse for Chapel to be like mad at him, because at one point he gets so intense she has to slap him out of it, like gives him a slap, and has a line about, yeah, I think you went a bit far there. So that scene I wasn't quite keen on. Like, I liked the idea of it, but it was a bit melodramatic. Some of my favourite stuff in the episode is actually the stuff on the bridge with Una and Ortega's. And I think she's got a bit of a weird haircut, Una, in the episode, which some people have mocked. But I think it's one of her best episodes, this, because of how she acts towards Ortega's and how she's very fair, considering some of Ortega's actions are rash in this, and Una definitely makes some good points. She's always been the sort of sterner number 2 to Pike's like softer captain. Talking about strategy at one point when they realise that the Klingons are emerging on the planet, and Ortega's wants to just fly down, and she's giving out this rhetoric about the Klingons in the war and Because at one point Una says, we've got this agreement, they're not aggressive, and Ortega's is saying you can't trust them, and she's telling like these stories from the war, and that's another nice callback to the episode from last season also. But Spock comes up with an alternative plan, which for the time being Una is going to go with. She's going to go with Spock's more diplomatic plan. But later on, when things escalate, it's revealed, like, her hand is sort of forced, and they go with Ortega's kind of risky plan where she's going to fly through this field. All near, like, basically at the end of the episode is that Ortega's tricked her. Then Ortega's purposely flew low enough, then it would alert the Klingons to their presence, and the Klingons would go in. So it was basically a trick to force Una's hand into saying, okay, we've got to go with your plan now. And what I like about this is that Una has the point that they were on a shuttle leaving the planet, then you basically put us in danger over nothing. You know, there was, in the end, there was no reason to go through with the plan because they were about to leave anyway, and that's all hindsight. But I think it's once again going by the playbook, then these things are taken into account than if you don't need to, because part of Ortega's narrative is that, okay, you're leaving them on the planet for hours with the Klingons, and who knows what they might do to them, because again she has personal histories from the war with the Klingons. He gives Ortega's a 2-week suspension and says, this is your last warning, you can't do this again. And you know, I like it because Ortega's very emotive, which you understand, but a little bit hot-headed, which is within her character. And you can definitely see Ortega's perspective. Like, it's not a clear-cut case. Like, you can understand why she would want to go with this plan. But Una definitely has some good points in return, and is thinking about the whole crew, not just about Pike and Mbenga. And because there's even a bit of a joke with Uhura where it's like, well done, Erica, but don't do that again, because that was dicey. So I think in this episode, Una is actually a great number 2. Like, she's very fair to Ortega's, but she's also very stern when she needs to be, and says, no, that was out of line, it wasn't right to trick me, and you needlessly put everyone else in danger. And the other little detail I like about that plot is that at one point she's talking to La'an about it, and about Erica's gun-ho plan, and how aggressive she's being at one point. And Una picks up on the fact that Ortega's is probably still having some PTSD from her experience with the Gorn, which is a nice callback to the end of the last episode, because when I was watching the episode I thought, well, are we going to go back to that? Like, clearly they've set it up and they will go back to it at one point, but it's just funny that if it doesn't get referenced at all in the episode after that one, and I think this is their way of doing it. Una says to La'an, you of all people should be sympathetic of what she's going to. So that's another good, like, feather in the cap of Una, because she is very sensitive to that side, and realises maybe that's what's impacting Ortega's to be a little bit trigger happy. So she's going to keep an eye on that, and is aware of that. And it's probably another factor in her saying, you're suspended for 2 weeks, you need to stay out of action for this amount of time. So she acts very fair in the episode, which I really like. So there you have it. I think it's a good episode. It's just 1 or 2 things that could have been changed to make it a little bit stronger, a little bit more satisfying. But lots to talk about, still some exciting stuff. So that's Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 Episode 3, Shuttle to Kafora. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of the episode? What were some of the stronger and weakest parts of the episode for you? There will be no classic Trek this week because I've been quite busy and didn't really have time to watch one as part of this review, but I'll try and get back to that for next week. You can support me on patreon.com/boardnow if you want to support the channel monetarily, or you can be a channel member, and I'll link those in the description. Keep watching TV, keep watching Star Trek, and I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.